welcome back to the 8:30 to 9 o'clock session of the 2016 Open Simulator Community Conference. And this session is entitled Exploring Creativity in Open Simulator, the Digital Art Museum. As a reminder to our in-world and web audience, you can view the full conference schedule and see the speakers' bios at conference.opensimulator.org. You can also tweet us questions at OpenSimCC with the hashtag OSCC16. Our speakers today are Mary Howard and Andrew Wheelock. And Mary is a sixth grade teacher in Western New York. She created a blog called yoursmarticles.blogspot.com, where she shares her vast experience in educational technology. She has worked in the past few years with the Islands of Enlightenment projects, designing curriculum for the era of the King and the Learning by Design projects, to name just a few. Andrew Wheelock is a technology integrator for the Western New York Regional Information Center, a regional public education service organization. In addition, Andrew has been working with schools in Western New York on open sim learning adventures for 5 years. I want to welcome you both to OSCC 16, and Andrew, I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here once again. We really love being here. I think our introduction is already pretty well underway, so I'm going to just move forward with what we've been doing. It all started probably, just to give you a little bit of our history of this whole project. We call these the Islands of Enlightenment projects, and it started in about 2010, and then the first thing that we did in the first project we started with our Open Sim adventures was the Understanding the Holocaust project. And that was really meant to be a companion piece to the Diary of Anne Frank. So the students read the book, and then they are taken in world to get a digital recreation of the streets of Amsterdam, and they can see kind of a virtual or a digital representation of the secret annex. And of course, the tie-in is meant for kids to be able to first see the annex, but also to create something at the end, to become kind of a historical museum curator and design their own curation experience for a museum, so others can learn from what the students have done. Then the next project, and I do want to say this was funded through a grant through the New York State Department of Education. We were very grateful for that support and help. Then for year two, we did the Heir of the King, which is where I got Mary involved. And Mary is, I call her the curriculum whisperer, because Mary can take kind of anything and just explode curriculum all over the place with it. And we created kind of a medieval role play situation where kids could kind of experience life in a medieval village, and they had to kind of work their way up through quests and eventually solve kind of an Arthurian mystery to discover who is the heir of the king. So that was a really multifaceted, open sim adventure. And then finally, through really kind of those two projects, we saw just this explosion of building. And I'm sure you've seen it for those of you who are Minecraft kids or no Minecraft kids. You know that building is just, you just can't stop kids. They just love it. So that kind of took us to kind of year three, which was the Learning by Design. And we were very fortunate to have the Darwin Martin House, which is a Frank Lloyd Wright house here in Buffalo, New York. And we were able to connect with them, and they were just wonderful kind of partners. And, we were able to bring the teachers on site and get a tour of the home, and then bring their students there, and then let the students kind of use the principles of architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright, which is known as the prairie style architecture, and put it into their own builds, which really focused us. So that's kind of their last thing. And then Mary, of course, took it in a whole bunch of different ways, which I'll turn it over to her, but she can talk about her Invention Convention and Westerling Mansion, and then we'll finish it up. So I'm going to turn it over to my awesome partner and friend, Mary Howard.
Hi, and thank you. And thank you, Meg, for the lovely introduction. So yes, I'm a sixth grade teacher, and I just want to share really how working with open sim environments has truly changed my instruction. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about does involve the Frank Lloyd Wright work that the students did. And yes, I love Frank Lloyd Wright too. I've learned so much through the project. So the virtual environment work that the students did, and as Spiff mentioned, students love building. So it was Spiff's brainchild to bring the Darwin Martin House, which is a Buffalo historical area, and allow the students to study that and get into the details of that. And so what they did was they went in a virtual environment, and I'm going to back up just a little bit. I actually had them research Frank Lloyd Wright. So I wanted them to learn all about the architectural principles behind Frank Lloyd Wright, that he uses stained glass windows in his structures, that he uses a central hearth, that the furniture is barrel furniture, that there's a Japanese influence to some of his prairie style homes. So we did our research component of this. And again, allow me to mention I'm an ELA teacher. So I really needed this to have that curriculum teeth that Spiff mentioned. So we did the research component through a Google tour. So we weren't in a virtual environment yet. We were just researching. And I got them to learn all about the different principles. We had this bank of vocabulary I wanted them to know. And if we could change the slide, I want to show you a little bit about the kinds of things that they did. Because we took them step by step. So once they had, what I thought, done enough research on it, one of the things we did was use the University of Buffalo Digital Archives. I had them going in archival photos and looking at the Darwin Martin House and looking at the pergola, the conservatory, and all of these types of things. Sorry, ELA stands for English Language Arts in New York State. So I had them looking at all these different things to learn about the structures. Now, we're not really looking at it from an artistic standpoint. We're really looking at it from a research standpoint. How was Frank Lloyd Wright influenced, and how do we see these types of things in his architecture? These students were coming at the project from really not understanding anything about art and architecture, and quite frankly, neither was I. So these are the kinds of pictures the students were looking at, and if we could change the slide again, I want you to really see the types of things they were able to create in the virtual environment. I gave them space, I gave them land, and I said, guys, go build. Take this knowledge, take this information that you've gathered through our research and build. And it was kind of funny along the way. I didn't know what to expect myself from what the students could accomplish. And remember, we're dealing with a Minecraft generation. You know, there's this real hunger to build. So the students, I gave some of the students a prefab house, kind of like a little mobile home that sort of looked like a Frank Lloyd Wright structure. And 90% of the kids said, Mrs. Howard, could you please delete that? I want to build my own structure, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious, because here I was trying to make their job easier, and they ended up wanting to make it harder, essentially. They wanted to start from the ground up. So we stripped away all the prefab houses that I'd given them to decorate, and they started from scratch. And you're seeing up here on the slide the types of evidence of learning that happened as a result of the project. This is just one inside of one of the little homes. They put in stained glass windows. They added a Japanese influence to one of the portraits. There was a central hearth in almost every single home. Of course, they had to have the real flickering fire. And if we could change the slide again, there's even more, evidence of the types of things that they learned from the images, from the research, from all of that. They put barrel chairs in their homes. They saw in a lot of the pictures the types of furniture that Frank Lloyd Wright created. They put skylights in their homes. They had 2-story homes, very open floor plans. So it was pretty amazing to see them going from, I have no idea who Frank Lloyd Wright is, to being actually able to explain what they had done in their builds. And I have a little presentation from a student here that I'm going to try to play for you, where you can hear the words coming from her. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it up at the moment. Okay, it's not pulling up at the moment. But I had the students screencast their work. So we just used Screencast-O-Matic, and I had the students take people on tours of their homes digitally through Screencast-O-Matic, and I had them explain what they put in the home, why they put it there, and how it represents something that Frank Lloyd Wright did. And when you hear their voices and you hear the explanations that they provide, it's pretty amazing. Yes, form follows function. They said all of these words. They said central hearth. They said geometric designs, abstract designs, stained glass. Again, we're dealing with 10 and 11-year-olds, and yet the terms and the vocabulary coming out of them were truly tremendous. You could see that they were very influenced by this project and truly learned who Frank Lloyd Wright is and what he accomplished. The best part as
Hey,
part of,
Mary,
yeah,
can I just say one of my favorite parts was
yeah.
listening to one of your students when she said Frank Lloyd Wright was big and bold. And when you go to the Frank Lloyd Wright house or the Darwin Martin house in Buffalo, when you see the neighborhood, it's all very traditional European style architecture, and then this just amazing house right in the middle of it. That was one of my favorite things. Sorry.
It was, no, it was pretty cute because it was pretty unexpected. We were asking them what they thought of Frank Lloyd Wright, and she just popped out with big and bold, and it was awesome. Yeah, and that's actually, Spiff, that's actually where I was headed. And part of the project, the first year we did it, was they got to go to the Darwin Martin house. Now, you take 10-year-olds on a trip to the Darwin Martin house, generally you can expect that they're going to be like, okay, this is not really terrific. We saw the reverse. We saw the students kind of gasping when they made connections between the work that they had created and the work that they were seeing in real life. Like, oh my gosh, there's the central hearth, or oh, there's a stained glass window, or there are the horizontal lines. So it was quite amusing to us to see 10-year-olds sort of excited about an historical landmark. And again, the conversations that were coming from the parents at home and how enthusiastic they were that we'd given these students this gift, that not only were they engaged and excited in researching, but they were also learning about a landmark in our region that was influencing them in a great way. So that started
I think us as adults also learned a lot, didn't you, Mary? I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
No, say that again.
I think the adults learned a lot too. Me personally, I never really understood architecture and its, first of all, its form function, but also its artistry and how Frank Lloyd Wright used, compression and release to, bring you in and out of the home. It's really awesome. I got a real learning experience.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. Just so much new information that I hadn't been exposed to. Yeah. So it was seeing them become builders was sort of step one. But then step two was sort of like, okay, guys, the project is done. And then there was sort of this look of, no, please we don't want to stop. And so that's where, it was March, April, and I had 2 months of school left, and you can't just put them in virtual environments and take them out. You just can't do it. So that is where I conceived of the next project, was this Invention Convention. So in the past, I had done with the students a invention writing assignment. Oh my goodness, thank you for changing the slide because I totally forgot about part of it. Spiff, go back to the other slide. I completely forgot about part of it. When we did the digital archive work, I stumbled across the fact that New York State had a student research award contest. And I thought, I'll bet you nobody is submitting virtual world work into this contest. So as a part of their research on Frank Lloyd Wright last year, I had the students studying those archives, and then they put together an annotated bibliography, which is really a 9th grade skill. We really don't get into annotating bibliographies in the 6th and 7th grade, but I made them do it. I had them explain every element that they incorporated based upon something in the digital archives, and they put it in their annotated bibliography. And then we submitted these to the digital archive contest. And the next slide kind of shows that Student Research Awards contest. And what was really awesome is 8 of our students were recognized as part of this contest. And there's the flyer. They do it every single year, but we did. 8 of our students got recognized by the awards contest. So that was very, very fulfilling to see that happen. I'm kind of wondering if they didn't really understand necessarily what virtual environments were, the judges, what virtual environments were, what my students were actually doing. So we did our best to communicate what had taken place as a part of the program, but nonetheless, the teeth were there. And you saw that slide kind of flicker by with all of those Common Core standards in there. Ultimately, I'm a 6th grade English ELA teacher, and ultimately I'm accountable to the standards. So I often have to justify, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it based on Common Core standards. So I love that this slide is blurry. I love that you can't read the majority of these standards in here, because it's proof to me that, boy, were those standards in there. These students were researching, they were writing, they were integrating, they were analyzing, they were doing all the things that they needed to do, yet we were working in virtual environments. And so it made that part an awesome demonstration of how we can meet Common Core and still be 21st century learners. So going back to what I was talking about with the Invention Convention. Sorry about that, Spiff. Did I throw you off?
No. I think, too, that it also, we found kids wanted to build off on their own time. And when we asked one of the kids how long they work, I've spent 40 hours doing that. So it's almost, like, if Netflix has changed kind of the environment of TV watching, this has kind of changed the dynamic of learning. They're doing it on their own time, learning and building and creating. So I thought that was neat. Another neat sidebar.
We were often tickled to kind of go home and log in, and sure enough, they were, the little ants building all over the place, and that was a pretty awesome feeling to come home and see that. So phase 2, I had inspired builders, I had inspired workers, and so I just kept going with it. And they were given an assignment. They had to solve a problem in the world today. So I asked them to design something that would solve a problem. And this, for me, historically was an explanatory writing assignment. I needed them to design something, and I had them draw cute little pictures, and then they would write about what it was and how it worked, etc. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to use that space in the virtual world that Spiff had given me to try something else. And so Spiff gave us 2 malls, 2 blank, wide open, empty spaces where the students could take the inventions that they had created and bring them into the virtual environment. So we went step by step. They designed something, and I actually told them what prims they had to work with in order to build the item. So they took the different prims and pieced them together, and I gave them a budget. I told them, a certain prim is going to cost maybe $20,000, but you can only obtain it from Africa. And another prim is going to cost you, if you want to use a circle, it's going to cost you $10,000, and you can only obtain it from this particular country. So I wanted them to learn a little bit about, the restrictions that might take place when it comes to building and designing. So we tried that. I ran into a little bit of trouble with the constraints that I put upon the students when it came to the designing and picking their prims from different countries, but we did our best to work within the parameters. So we got them in their virtual mall, and they designed these virtual inventions. And once they got to the mall, we saw the same thing happen. They busily ran to their little stores. They established marketing plans and marketing strategies for their items, catchy phrases, imported pictures. And I think if we switch to the next slide, some of the kind of the template sheets that I used to give the students the project are there. I think we're a little flip-flop, but you can see they had the sheets kind of taking them step by step through the process. And they were able to, build these items and then sort of sell them, if you were. And so we had lots of little contests in the world. They had store after store after store, some of the most crazy, unique little names. And they were selling this invention and justifying why the invention is helpful to society. And I don't know if you, Spiff, want to add anything what you saw in there with those Invention Convention projects.
Mary, there's a good question in chat that it was talking about is encourage social interaction, and how does it decrease or increase issues for the screen generation we see now? I think, go ahead and answer that. I think you could.
Well, we're talking to a generation that's really already in that world. And in some ways, it's nice to see the technology that the students are often using on their own in their bedrooms, or, in a somewhat isolation. I know a lot of them chat online with one another for more structured, beneficial purposes. With the stores that I had with the students, they were partnered. They all had to partner together So there was that collaborative component. They had to agree on, what was the marketing strategy going to be? What's the theme for the store? So I think in that sense, we were able to provide them with more of an opportunity to interact. I'm not sure I'm exactly answering that question, but it's a bigger question, I think, than our small sample.
All right. On that note, we
Yeah.
are going to have to wrap this session. I'm sorry. It's such a great topic and so good for all the kids that you guys have worked with. Both of our guests are going to be available for questions after this session. So you can go over to which one are you guys on? Expo 3?
Yeah, I think so. And we are
Expo 3.
booth 14.
Okay. So you can join Mary and Andrew and further talk to them about this. And as a reminder, you can see what's coming up again on our schedule online, conference.opensimulator.org. We're going to have about a half-hour break here in the schedule. So wherever you may be in this physical world, you can take a break, and we will be back here at 9:30 with the presentation entitled Google Maps and Panoramas in Immersive VR Environments. So again, I want to thank our guests, and I want to thank all of you. For those of you in world, feel free to go explore the Sims, the Poster Expo, stop by any of the booths from any of our speakers and learn more about what they do. And we'll be back here at 9:30. Thank you.